Welcome everyone for today's guest lecture with Rami Ismail. We will be hosting this session in English because there will be a lot of English speakers also here. This is also the very last edition of the guest lectures that we organized for this current school year. But we wanted to close up with a famous person here in the game industry. If anyone has some kind of topic or question that you want to ask, the presentation will be the moment for it. And afterwards, there will also be a Q&A. We will try to keep it on time, unlike last year, which took a little bit more time than previously planned. But give a big applause for Rami Ismail.
Hi everybody. Okay, I have a little bit of time. Hi. Just to do the intros, get it out of the way. My name is Rami Ismail. I'm an embedded game developer. I've been making indie games for about 15 years now. I originally founded a company called Vlaanderen, which the original idea started here at the Utrecht School of Art and Technology, actually, not in this building, a building a long time ago in Hilversum. Vlaanderen made a number of games that were very well received. We did games such as Super Great Box, we did Luftrausers, we did Ridiculous Fishing, and we did Nuclear Throne. If you want to know what's kind of the common thread in all those games is they have lots of screen shape. That was the thing we were famous for, and that was the thing we were good at. We shut down the company in about 2020, although it has had a little bit of a revival after my co-founder, Ismail Nijman, picked things back up again to keep it moving. I'm the organizer of GameDev.world, which is an online games conference in 8 languages. All speakers can speak in their language of choice. We live translate everything. We live subtitle everything. It's very hard. I do not recommend doing that. But it is an awesome event, and every time we get to do it, I'm very grateful we get to. I was the founder of the Global Games Fund, which was a fund for game developers in emerging territories, places where the games industry is a little bit younger, newer, where people have less access to hardware, to knowledge, to events, to visas, to passports. I'm an ambassador for Safe in Our World, which is a charity that makes sure that the games industry is inclusive and that everybody has a fair chance to be in the games industry without fearing for their safety. I was an executive board member of the IGDA, which is the International Game Developers Association, the largest game developers association in the world. I am the lobbyist for the Dutch Games Association, which means that I work with the Dutch government in making sure that they finally take us seriously and perhaps give us some money to do some cool shit. That'd be nice. And then I work for Able Gamers, which is a charity that does hardware and software for people that have disabilities, ranging from physical disabilities, paralysis, things like that, to mental disabilities, which preclude them from playing certain types of games. Basically, I do a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't really expect to do a whole bunch of stuff. I'm a programmer by trade. I started coding when I was 6. It was bad, let's be honest. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't even know how to speak English at that time. But I wrote my first lines of code back then. I came up through StarCraft, I came up through level editors, I came up through modding. And then in 2008 or 9, when I was done with high school and I had to choose a future, it turned out there were game schools. So, why the fuck not, right? My dad was not very happy with that. My dad is Egyptian. He believed there was 4 valid career choices. You could be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or disgrace to the family. I picked disgrace to the family. He was not very happy with that either. My mom is Dutch, so she was like, Rami, you should do whatever makes you happy. So there was a bit of a contrast there. My dad still doesn't really understand what I do. When he talks to the Egyptian family, he tells them that I work in animation. I've never been able to draw. I did a global game jam talk once where I drew a cow, and the point was do things you're not good at. I will still never show anybody that drawing ever again because I put the head on top of the cow. I forgot what a cow looks like. I was nervous. I don't know what to tell you. And so Vlambeer was sort of like the kickoff for my career, and it was a strange time. This was very early indie days, so 2009-ish. If you've heard of Super Meat Boy, Fez, Braid, sort of like that generation of indie games, that was the last generation of independent developers that had a real job in the games industry before they went indie. And so my generation of independent game developers was a bit weird in that most of us were students straight out of school, or still in school in some cases. So we had no idea what the fuck we were doing, but also there was nobody else doing it, which was kind of cool. So we were figuring things out as we went, and one of the coolest things that happened back then is as Steam started accepting digital games, as Xbox started opening Xbox Live indie games, or Xbox Live Arcade as it was known later, PlayStation started looking at putting indies on the PlayStation Minis platform, which was a Vita initiative. Vlambeer kind of was one of the only companies that was in those conversations. And the reason for that, again, was my dad, who believed that, he would say in Arabic, there's a word, khalas, which means enough. And he would say, khalas with Nintendo, enough Nintendo. Because that was how he understood my job, as to play Game Boy. And so he said that he would never respect my job as a job until it made money. So I tried to make money. That was sort of like the thing. And that was the thing that made Vlambeer kind of weird, in that we had Jan Willem Nijman, who was a design genius, still is a design genius, gotta be honest, doing hundreds of jam games a year. And then we had me, a programmer who knew how to actually put things on commercial platforms, but who also was willing to go and negotiate about making money. For a while in the indie game scene, a business developer, I don't know if you've heard that term, but the phrase business developer, a person who works at a company and tries to get business for a company, the word for that in the indie scene was a Rami. Because I was the only one doing it. And so that was kind of the weird time that I grew up in as an independent developer. By now things are different. Indie is massive. It is probably one of the largest aspects of PC console gaming. Also on mobile, it's a massive subset of games. I think in terms of awards, indies tend to win a third to half of the awards most years, which is awesome. And where back in the days when I started, the indie scene was about this size, frankly. Not tens of thousands of developers around the world doing weird, cool, interesting stuff. So I'm very excited about that. It's really cool to see how things have gone. The reason I tell you all this is because the presentation I have for you is a bit weird, and so it helps to understand who I am and what I do. The presentation I have, as requested, is called 10 Empty Slides, and it's a fairly straightforward presentation. I have 10 empty slides.
Whoa.
What we're going to do is we're going to film out. You're going to film out, and then I'm going to give that presentation. So I have no idea what we're going to be talking about, but any questions, thoughts, concerns, weird things in the industry, things you want me to talk about, throw them my way. I'll put them in the slide deck, and then I'll see if I can actually give a good talk about that at the end of this. Does that sound fair? Yeah, go for it.
I was wondering if you have advice on setting up rev share contracts in quite specific cases between two freelancers?
So a collaboration contract?
Yes.
Okay. So how to work together without murder. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Question number 2. Anybody else? Anybody else? I have. Let's start there.
Well, I've been wondering, because I'm currently trying to look for internships and that sort of thing, and I'm really struggling with setting up my identity as a game designer. And how do you know exactly when you are good at a specific thing as a game designer? It's really weird. Am I describing it right? Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. That was much more serious than the first one. Not that that wasn't a serious question. I just made it over there.
As a professional with insight, what kind of opportunities do you see right now that people like us on our level could take use of?
Blind spots, looking up at the biggest picture. Sure. Yes, cool, interesting, I love that question. Number 4. Shit, I pointed between the two of you, so rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. I love being at game school, this is great. It's just, I didn't even have to go, you figured it out. Nice,
Anyway, in your Rami days, you put out a lot of Steam games, I'm gonna say pretty quickly, about like 5, 6, I'm not sure exactly, in the space of, I'm gonna say 4 to 6 years or so. I was kind of wondering, like, how do you make that step between just having a little game where you just show your friends and family, and how do you kind of like take that up to something where you actively feel comfortable asking money for?
Yep. Good, awesome. That's like a 15-minute slide right there. So good. You're fitting a lot of the time I need. That's great. I'll come back to you. I promise. I'll come back to you. Over there.
Yeah, you mentioned your role as well as a business developer.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips in regards to that process where you're talking to people and trying to get the business working together?
So, okay, the question, can you hear me if I don't use the mic for now? Because that's going to be easier. Okay, the question is, do you have any tips if you're going to be doing business development, right? And so the question is, when you say business development, do you mean you are representing a company, or do you mean you're representing yourself, or which group are you representing here?
I think when you yourself is maybe an interesting.
Yeah. I think that one will fold into question number 2, which was branding yourself as a professional. But if you want me to talk about this dev proper, I can also make some time to talk about that.
I want you to talk about as many things as possible. So
Alright, cool. Don't worry, that's really hard to stop me from doing that. So, is there any question about over there?
Work, life, and study balance.
Work, life, study, balance, and other myths. Cool, awesome. Yeah, sure.
I guess I'm curious about your input on tools and engines and whether or not it's worth building your own or just the big ones that are available now.
Yeah, tools,
Just in
engines,
general, yeah.
tools, engines, and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't even know the word for that, but yes, I get you. I saw a question over there.
Yeah, as a student, it's really daunting to look up at all the companies. So my question is how you can find your place in a really oversaturated market.
You know what? I'm going to fold that back into question number 2 as well, because I think that actually fits well there. Yeah, sorry, I promised. So go ahead.
Got me thinking, how has sort of like the mindset of making games has sort of changed actually throughout the past 20 years?
Yeah.
Sort of like, what preconceptions making games back then are still seen right now, and how do we avoid making mistakes based on the past version of what's happening?
Yeah, cool. Number 8. Let's go to the back again. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a different type of question. If you don't want to answer it, it's okay. I was wondering, did you have to deal or advocate with your personal beliefs, faith, and religion, and what the gaming industry wants from you? Do you have examples of certain kinds of dilemmas?
Yeah, okay. Dealing with being a minority in the games industry. And then specifically, I think this question is pointed at, I'm Muslim. I'm Arab and Muslim, and so I'm guessing those are the experiences that are relevant, but obviously marginalization exists in a million different ways in the games industry, so hopefully I can find a more general answer. Yeah, there, Mark?
What would be your solution for the internationals, about the reality of the game industry and the film industry?
Could you repeat that just a little louder because I'm far away?
What advice would you give for internationals about the reality of the game industry and the film industry?
Yeah. Is it okay if I fold that back into number 7? What is so romanticized about games industry? I think that would be a good place to go. Yeah.
Yeah, also a different question, and you know that to answer it.
Sure.
But your personal biggest blunders.
Yeah. Oh, I can talk about a lot of those. And how to move on after fucking up frequently.
games industry. One of the things you said, like the joke about work-life balance, I feel like it's almost a requirement to give in part of your work-life balance.
Yeah. Is it okay if I fold that back into one of the previous questions? Well, that's a great question, but I think it folds well into one of the other ones. Over there?
Maybe this question was already asked, but then just in case, how are the design processes? Like
design processes?
Yeah.
What if I just make it game development processes in general? And then I can fill whatever
Yeah.
part is left at the end.
Yeah, sure.
Alright, the process. Actually, wait. Kind of fits with greenlighting a game. Yeah, okay. Let's keep that with greenlighting a game. I'll fold it there. I have one more question. That actually, multiple questions. I'm sorry. Like, yes.
I don't know if that would be a good question, but this is something I've been struggling with. I'm really, really scared of the future. I'm a game artist. If I will get a job that I love and will make enough money for me. I don't want to be rich.
Right.
I just want to have a stable job, and
Yeah.
I'm scared that I might not get a job I love. And how do I deal with it? Do I go like full force ahead?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. If I fold that into the romanticized slide, then I can still get that final question over there. So I'll fold your question in there. If I forget it on slide 5, yell at me.
I can ask it, but if you
Yeah, but also just yell at me because I think it's a good answer for people to hear. Yeah.
And mine might be a bit more general than just specific games, but how do you go about learning new things?
Learning new things. You know what? Fuck that. I love that. That's great. Awesome. All right, cool. Let's do a presentation then. So we have 10 formerly empty slides, but let's try and get through this. Let's see if I can do some fun little transitions while we do it. First one, right? Work in the games industry. There's a few things that are generally true, and that is one of them that is generally true, not always, is that most developers can't make a game by themselves. So for almost every game development, you'll work with a small team, or at least with several people. Whether that is full-time throughout the entire project or whether that is just for a few things that you're not good at. Very often what you'll see is people are good at one or two disciplines and then they'll bring in somebody who can fill the other one. So if you have somebody who's a programmer designer, which is a fairly common combination, you'll find that they'll need to work with an artist. If you have a programmer artist, usually a musician or designer comes in. So almost always you're going to be working with people. Now, working with people is nice. It's lovely, you get to learn a lot, you get to see a lot. And it is not necessarily true that you automatically have to like each other, right? So my co-founder and I, at Vlaambeer, we famously really don't like each other. We didn't like each other when we were in school. We didn't like each other when we started the company. We didn't like each other when we shut down the company. And we don't like each other today. That doesn't mean I don't respect the hell out of Jonathan. I think he is a phenomenal designer. It's just please don't put us in a room together if we don't have to be in a room together because we just annoy the shit out of each other, right? People often ask, how did you end up working together? That's a very funny story. It involves us dropping out of this particular school. I do not recommend that. Please do not do that. Horrifying idea. But the truth of that is that back in those days, the ACU was a very different school. And it had very different approaches, especially to independent game development, which they didn't actually believe was a real thing. And so when we wanted to do independent game development, and they told us we absolutely cannot do that, we decided to fuck off. There were two people who decided to fuck off. It was me and Nijman. And that means that we had one enemy in common that we hated more than each other, which was the school. So we dropped out of school, started working together to do one game so that we wouldn't have to take more time with each other than absolutely necessary. That game was called Radical Fishing. It made $10,001, which was a lot of money for us at the time. Instead of just ramen noodles, we could now eat ramen noodles and some food once a week. It was awesome. Then we made Super Great Box, which was IGF nominated and won pretty much every design award that you could possibly win at that point in time. And then after that, we took Radical Fishing and made Ridiculous Fishing, which won every award under the sun. It was crazy. So then we just kind of kept doing it. But there was one thing that I think really helped us, which was from the start, we made very clear rules about who does what. And so I think there's two parts about collaboration that you need to figure out. The first part about collaboration that you're going to want to figure out is how do we shape this collaboration? And the second one is how do we make agreements about what happens when we stop working well? And so very often what people do is they create a situation where they negotiate things going poorly after things have gone poorly. At that point, there's no saving, right? And so I always tell two stories that I think are relevant, but I think the first story I want to tell is of a small independent studio down in the United States. They're a studio of about 8 people. They were students and they made their first indie game. And their first indie game was a hit. Not a little hit, like big hit, right? Like lots of money kind of hit. Like you can make games for the next 10 years without ever having to worry about salary for all 8 of you, kind of hit. Which was awesome, like was awesome for them. But they called me anyway, and even back then I was kind of like somebody that people would call if they had problems, and the problem they had was actually very simple. At that studio, they always believed in flat hierarchy. Everybody was equal. And now if you hear flat hierarchy and you hear 8 people, you should see one particular problem immediately. Which is that you can get a stalemate. There is a scenario in which you get a 4-4, and no decision can be made, because it's a 4-4, right? And so, the issue that they had run into is that they wanted to do a second game, but they couldn't figure out what the second game was going to be. Was the second game going to be a sequel to their first game, which was a monster hit, or was it going to be something else entirely? They had been stuck in that situation for about 3-4 months by the time they called me. And they said, Rami, we need your help. We're stuck. How do we get unstuck? Right? You and Jan Willem, you were 2 people. How do you do it? And I said, well, me and Jan Willem agreed that Jan Willem is the one who comes up with ideas, and I'm the one who greenlights ideas, which is what we'll get to at slide number 5. Right? But in their company, it was entirely flat. And so the way we ended up resolving this was actually I flew to the studio, and I sat down with everybody, and I tried to see if we could figure out who would be the creative director of the studio. Who would be in charge of game ideas? Right? Who would be in charge of like, what do we actually make? Guess what the vote was? 4-4. Exactly based on what the preference was for the game. They had gone to the point where the problem was already there, and now resolving the problem was no longer possible because there was a political gain for everybody to vote on the person they already wanted. And so we're utterly stuck. And so what we ended up doing is I ended up having the last vote. The entire team said, okay, Rami will have the last vote. I voted, let's do a sequel, because it was safer. And I thought it would be good to do a second game, get a little bit of extra experience before they tried something new again, right? We already had the tech, we already had the staff, we already had everything, so all they had to do is take all the good ideas they didn't put in the first game, take all the lessons of the first game, make a better second game. Get that done in a year and a half, and then move on. 2 of the people left in response to that vote, and they left the studio, so it was now a 6-person studio, which was still an even number, which I was a little upset about. If 1 person had left, if 3 people had left, that would have been a little better than 2 people leaving. But the second vote we did was after that vote was done, we voted on a creative director. And that creative director is still the creative director of that studio to this day. And it means if they ever get stuck for longer than 2 weeks, the creative director has to decide. And that's the way it works, right? You can set this up before things go to shit, which is the best time to set these things up. So the first part of this is process. Question?
Am I allowed to ask which studio or game this was?
No. One thing that you learn with client work is that very often those are stories that the studios get to tell. So if the studio ever decides to tell that story, I'm more than happy to share that. At this point, they've never told that story to anybody, which is fair. So you're allowed to ask, I'm just not allowed to answer. It's really the answer. So that's number 1. Number 1 is process. This has nothing to do with judges, this has nothing to do with lawyers, this has nothing to do with case law or anything. This is just when you start working together. For the love of God, assign people with responsibility for certain things. One great exercise you can do is called a RACI chart, R-A-C-I, which stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Sounds dry as fuck, which it is. It's very much MBA, sort of business, whatever. But I find this a very useful exercise. The R stands for who's responsible for actually doing the work. So for a level, which people on your team are responsible for doing the work of making that level? So you're probably going to have an artist, you're probably going to have a level designer or a designer, you're probably going to have a writer, if it's a game with narrative in it, right? Let's see what else we have. You'll have a programmer, not too much, but there'll be a programmer on that for a little while, right? And so you start putting together that team. One of them is going to get a bonus letter, which is the A, accountable. They're the one that's accountable for how it turns out. So if the level's good, that's their fault. If the level's bad, that's their fault. And they do not get to blame anybody else for this. It's on them. Good or bad, it's on them. If it's good, it would be graceful of them to thank the team. And if it's bad, it would be good for them to say, yeah, I fucked up. Right? That's the paradox of leadership. Is any good thing goes to the team, any bad thing lands just on you. If you ever work for anybody in leadership that doesn't do that, they suck. I know what to tell you. That's just the worst way of doing leadership. Every task in a game studio has one A. One accountable person. Not two accountable people, one only. And that doesn't mean that person is a dictator or that they have final say on everything. It means that if things get stuck, they're the one that's going to get you unstuck. At Vlaanderen, it was very simple. Jan Willem was responsible for game design. So he would come up with design ideas. I was responsible for literally everything else. Code, collaboration, budgets, timelines, marketing, community, all that was me. Jan Willem was just sitting there, having cool game ideas. I would think 99 of them were bad, one of them was awesome. That awesome one consistently was a hit. He was good at his job. He was really, really good at his job. So it was a pleasure, because I never had to worry about that. He just did this thing, and he never had to worry about my shit because I just did my thing. And if we disagreed with each other, we would argue. So on Luftverhausers, we had an argument about the shape of clouds. Went for 3 days. And it was crazy. It was a long conversation because Jan Willem wanted these really cool Chinese water paper clouds, sort of like lines, you know, like instead of like filled shapes. And we needed clouds because it's an airplane game, so if you don't have background, you don't have movement. So we needed background. And I wanted clouds that looked like clouds, which made sense to me. He was not into it. We argued for, the first day we argued, we both left angry, actually. We just went like, okay, listen, we'll have this conversation again tomorrow. We just, enough. Like, I think we argued for 3 hours and we were getting pretty unhappy. So we just fucked off and then came back the next day. The second day, I brought a large amount of information that said it should be clouds. I a little broad, yeah, I don't like it. Which didn't help. But also, I tried, and ultimately it's his call, right? On the third day, I brought one final thing to him, which is the lines actually look like wind. Like how I understand wind, like they have like a little poofy shape, right? Like it's blowing. And he looked at it and went, well, fuck. So we had clouds, my clouds. Now, if that had turned out to be a terrible idea, whose fault was that? Yes, it's his call, he's accountable. So if I had fucked up on that decision, everybody was like, the clouds are a little boring. His fault, right? The second thing I think we did right with Vlaanderen is the first thing we did, we got a lawyer. Not even kidding. The very first thing we did is we sat down with a lawyer and we said, okay, listen, here's what we want to do, here's what we want to achieve. Here's how we want to split it. And here's what needs to happen if things go to shit. And then the lawyer goes, okay, that's great. Here's what happens if things go to shit. What happens if one of you gets hit by a train? We're like, what? Could happen. Does my part go to my family? He's like, no, it goes to your middle. I'm like, no, I don't like that. No, I want that to go to my family. And he's like, we can do that. Never thought about that. Also fun question, if both of us got hit by a train, what happens then? Turns out that Dutch law actually will try and figure out who died first. That's how the law works. They figure out who died first, then that person's will gets executed. And then they go to the second person who died 0.3 seconds later. And then they execute their will. And so if my will does not say do not give it to Jan Willem, then it will be really good if I push Jan Willem a little bit towards the train that's incoming. So that his stuff goes to me first and then it goes to my family. Right? So I didn't know that. Right? That was not a thing that I was like thinking of. Sitting down with a lawyer is the only correct answer to a question like this. this. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't talk to other people, but if you're going to start a collaboration that will involve money at some point, waiting until money is there is like picking your creative director after you already agreed. You cannot make that decision when it's already gone to shit. So the simple rule I give people is figure out what happens when things go to shit while you're friends. While you like each other, while you're excited about working with each other. So that when you get to the point where you're not excited about working together, and that point will frequently come in studios. Sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2 years. I have a client right now where leadership, 2 founders, have worked together well for 12 years. And they've fallen apart in the last 6 months. They will not be friends ever again. I don't think that's ever going to happen. They have a contract. But there's so much pain and hurt between those two at this point that I don't think they'll ever talk to each other again after this. But at least we don't have to argue about what happens to the company. And it means all the jobs are safe, all the people working there are safe, and between them, both of them are going to walk away with enough money that they're not going to go bankrupt in the next few months. Right? Figure it out already. This is probably the hardest question I got asked today. So, yeah, thanks. So creativity, right? Let's talk creativity. Let's zoom out a little bit. And this is going to get a little fuzzy. But creativity is a weird job. We picked one of the weirdest jobs on earth. There is no objective measurement for creativity. So there's no way. I know school has to give you a grade, right? But technically that's bullshit. You can't grade creativity. You can't go like, oh yeah, no, you had a great idea, but it didn't fit this exact, like, the point of creativity is that we think outside of the box, right? And this was a big frustration with me in the educational system at large, but the educational system, like everything else, has the requirements, so they have to put you in a box. And they have to grade how well you fit in the box. That creates a second problem, because it's really hard to say, I'm good at this. You can't say I'm good at this because there's always somebody better, and there's always people worse. And there's a weird thing about being human that makes us more sensitive towards threats than towards safety. That's logical. It's evolution, right? If you hear a weird sound, it's good if your entire body goes, oh fuck. Well, if you just hear like the thing you hear every day, you know, a television jingle, nothing about you goes like, oh shit. So this is why we really obsess about negative comments, right? That's why we get into fight or flight when we read a blue sky comment. That's automatic, it's human. It's the way we are wired to be, is anything that could be a threat to us, and threat means many things, economical, physical, reputational, any of those will trigger an alarm in us to go, oh shit. That means that we're also going to read every negative thing that anybody could possibly say about our work at any point in our life as an immediate threat to ourselves, right? You can't help that. I am 15 years in, I've won a metric ton of awards. I go to events all the time. I'm asked as a public speaker anywhere. Do you think I came onto the stage with like, oh my god, I'm going to give a great talk? No, I'm fucking horrified. And that's never going to go away. And it doesn't have to, right? Because I got okayed with that feed. So that's point one. We can't make an objective measurement of what we do and how good we are compared to others. The other problem is there's a lot of people doing our job. There's a lot of artists out there, there's a lot of designers out there, there's a lot of programmers out there, a lot of musicians out there, a lot of sound designers out there, and many of them are ahead of you in their journey, right? So you can't win. There's no victory here, there's no getting to the finish line, because there is no finish line. Creativity is basically an internal race with one enemy, with one opponent, and the opponent is you. So the thing I would argue is that the only way to be good at creative work is to understand what you want to achieve and to measure against that. So what about you? Right? Like what about you makes you interesting, makes you weird? What things in your life make you stand out? For me, it was that my dad thought I didn't have a real job. That is genuinely an important part of my creative work. Because part of my creative vision was always, okay, yeah, no, I want to make something cool and interesting, but I also want to make sure that when people see it, they want to buy it, so that I can go to my dad and be like, see? With my bank account. Because he didn't care about the games. I could show him 100 games and he'd be like, I don't know. But if I showed him a number on my bank account that was like higher than what he is used to, then he would go like, oh, maybe I was wrong, right? So that was part of my creative process. Other parts of my creative process, like pointed out, I am Muslim. I was raised Muslim, which gives me a different perspective on the world than anybody else. Anybody might have noticed this, almost nobody did. Vlaanders games are almost always post-apocalyptic. Almost all of them are post-apocalyptic. You know what Western people do? Non-Muslim people, let me be precise in my language. What non-Muslim people do when they make a post-apocalyptic thing? Bottles. Bottles, always bottles. I've never really figured out why bottles, but I think the idea is that as the world goes to shit, people will drink more. Fallout, The Last of Us, all of these, bottles, beer bottles, bottle caps. Flower Game's not a single bottle. Why? Because I made it. And in my post-apocalypse, people don't go drinking. Because that's me. Is that a big creative decision? No, but it is a me creative decision. Right? And so, as you're working, one of the things that is part of any creative practice is figuring your own shit out. So, I like to believe that no choice in our brain is random. That there's always a reason for anything that we do, right? This is a big part of how I pick my games, of how I greenlight my games, is trying to figure out why I'm chasing something. And so I want you to sort of learn 2 exercises. The first one is very simple. If you've ever talked to like a 4-year-old, and they ask you why the sky is blue, you've tried to give them an answer. Did they ever accept that answer?
Never argue.
Always follow-up questions, right? They're like, "Wait, why is the sky blue? Oh, it's the light." But isn't the light white? No, light technically has no color. It's the why is blue. Because the sky is blue, but the sky is not a thing, right? Like, no, but they're still molecule. What's a molecule? Tiny specks. Kind of, like so small that you can't see them. And like the light hits them under a certain angle, and then the light breaks, and then the blue part reaches our eyes. So, why? Fuck about it, it's just blue, okay? Listen, I don't know what to tell you, right? That attitude, you need to have towards yourself. So if you're working on something, I don't care what game you're working on. Why that one? And then people will say because it's fun. What the fuck does that mean? It's cool. What the? Who decides cool? Yeah.
I kind of want to answer the question that you asked because I have a funny answer. In my head, when you said, well, if the kid asked me, why is the sky blue? I could either go into detail about like the whole process of how light works and how brain works. I could literally just say, because we perceive it as blue.
Right. And then the kid goes, why?
Well, because that's just how we see it.
Yeah, why?
Like, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Why is a very powerful question.
Yeah.
Because it forces us to actually dive into things, to delve into things and figure out why. Right? And so I believe that there's not a creative decision you can make that isn't based on you.
Yeah.
On your life, on your history, on the things that happen in your life, and the things that you find interesting, on the TV shows that you watched when you were little, on the Instagram reel or the TikTok reel that you saw last week that made you laugh, on whatever the fuck it is in your life that made you make a decision, that decision has a reason. And if you go across all your work that you've ever done, you will start finding that those reasons have a line to them. That there is a trajectory, that there's something that you are chasing. And if you can't find this, the second exercise I have for you is, have you ever had that moment where you're making something, and you look at it, or you play it, or whatever, you have that moment where you're like, nah, I fucked up. I don't know where I fucked up, but I fucked up. Something is wrong, right? You've had that moment. Almost every one of you will have had that moment at some point, where you were working on something, you had the moment where you just knew it was wrong. You know what that moment means? That you know what is right. You just haven't figured it out yet. That's the second exercise. If you ever have that moment of like, no, fuck no, this is wrong. The way an arm hangs off of a drawing, right? Like on a character. Or the way movement works in a game, or the way the jump feels in a game, or the way you program the main menu screen, and you have that moment where you're like, ah, fuck. That's the moment to go, okay, shit. I know it's wrong, what is right? Right? Yeah.
I was wondering, because you were saying about like how education is sort of putting someone in the box and then figuring out how they fit in the box. And I guess you're saying like that people define their own box. How do you measure that?
So the box only exists here. Only in this building. As soon as you leave this building, there's no box. The box has nothing to do with your ability as a creative. The boxes do with your ability to fulfill the program as the school has to legally do it. I'm not taking a dig at the school. They're doing their job. The value for you of being here is all of you. It's just hanging out with people who have the same ideas, who want to work together, who want to do things together, who want to learn from each other, who want to push each other, who want to make stuff outside of school, inside of school, and say, okay, I understand that here's the box, but I'm only interested in this corner of thoughts. And so I'm only going to do shit right here, because this is the bullshit. Well, other people will be working in that corner. And then you find the people that want to do this corner, and maybe secretly you go a little bit outside of the box every now and then, or you decide to do part of the project inside the box, and as soon as the project is over, you just take it outside of the box. Right? The box is only here. It will never count again. Right? It only counts while you're here. In fact, if you win a competition here, that is a competition of the box. And as soon as you leave this building, all that does is it says that you did better than the other people trying to fit the box. Right? So I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is an opportunity to, I think they reintroduced Stussy, right? Stussy is here?
Yeah.
Thank fuck. I had a fight with Mark Rutte about that. It was great. No, I'm not even kidding. This is a real story. I had a fight with Mark Rutte about Stussy.
Wait, when was this?
When he decided to shut it down, like an asshole. No, he wanted to take a photo with us at Lambert, and I told him, I will have a photo with you if you reintroduce Stussy, and then he went with somebody else, and we had a bit of an argument about that. He was not happy with us calling him out and shit. Bit of a weak thing. Anyway. Long story, sure. The important thing is never the box. This is temporary. It is not important. It will never be important again. Figure out you. That's the most important thing you can do. Is like, okay, when I make something, it is not random. You have never made in your life a video game because it's cool. Because that means fucking nothing. My cool is not your cool. And your goal is not anybody else's goal, right? In fact, I do this exercise frequently with people where I just take a word, like, you know, I usually take the sun. I say, burning ball of lava in the sky, sun, right? Everybody knows what the sun is. What is the first word that comes to mind when you think of the sun, right? Just keep that word in your mind for a second. Another word. So we have sun, and you could have light, you could have warmth, you could have moon, right? Whatever the word was, if it's light, warmth, or moon, that's fine. Anybody wants to give me their word? Go for it.
Helium?
Helium! You did some chemistry in the class or something?
No, just on school, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Who else had helium?
Yeah. Hydrogen was my first thought.
Yeah, hydrogen, helium. Yeah, no, that's just. Helium, who else had helium?
Yeah.
0 people. That's uniquely you. Nobody else in this room had that.
I have meadows.
Meadows. Who else had meadows?
Plants.
No? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I had warm and burning.
Warm/burning. Who else had? Let's go with warm. Who had warm? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 5. Does anybody in this room think they have a word that is more than, let's say, 1/3 of the room? Let's make it easier. 1/4 of the room.
I think no one has it.
Sorry?
I think no one has my word.
Wait, what is it?
Sneaker night.
What?
I was thinking about a video of Lenny Gonzalez, which was about conspiracy theories, because she said the sun, and I was like, oh, flat earthers, and then sneaker night happened in that.
That's pretty much uniquely you, right? Like, and so here's the thing. Even on the word sun, we're not going to be able to agree. And we all agree what the sun is. Big ball of lava in the sky. It's not lava, I know. Technically, hydrogen. But that's the point, right? If we can't even agree about a thing that is objectively there, how the fuck are we going to agree about cool, or fun, or interesting, or engaging, or whatever the hell it is? I want you to figure out why it's cool. I want you to figure out why it's interesting. And I want you to make sure that when you figure that out, that you're going to be honest with it. Because too often I see people make games and say, okay, I want to make it cool, and then they go, but what does the market want? Let me tell you, one thing I can guarantee you about the market, any game that's successful didn't give too much of a shit about the market. There's a weird paradox about it, but yes, you have to do market research, yes, you have to validate it, but do you think Balatra, local phone, sat there and go like, oh, fuck, what about the market? Should I make weird jokers or should I make hot jokers? No, fuck no. Just thought, jokers. And then he made weird ass jokers. Why? Because that was cool. Why was that cool? I don't know. I'm not him. I have no idea. What I can tell you is that game feels coherent. You play it, you feel there's one mind behind that game doing the thing. You think Peak happened because they said that, went like, what is the mark? No, it was a fucking game jam. They went, they added cool physics. Physics were fucking funny because you fall off a mountain and then yeah, that's fucking hilarious. Okay, let's do more of that. Clear obscure? You think anybody went like, let's do some market research and see if people want a really fucking French JRPG? No. They just really wanted to make a French game, and then they made a French game, right? Your game has to be honest. To be honest, you have to be honest with yourself. So, when you're asking about branding, when you're asking about positioning yourself, I'll get to you in a second.
Yeah, of course.
When you ask about branding, there's no objective measurement. You can't outcompete the others because everybody else is on their own journey. You're not actually competing with them in that way. But what I hear too often from schools, and what I see too often from students, is that people try to be generalists. So they are an artist. The fuck is that? How do I hire an artist? I can't hire an artist. What about you? What makes you an interesting artist? What are you interested in? What is the kind of art that you love doing? Show me that. And then, of course, also show me your ability to do other stuff, but that's not why I'm going to hire you. I'm going to be looking at 400 resumes in 3 days. All of them want the same job. I know what I need for my game. And I know what I don't need. And what I don't need is somebody who can't even figure out who the fuck they are. I don't be tired of those. I can hire 100 artists that have an opinion. I need an artist with an opinion. And the opinion needs to be in line with the game I'm making. And that means, at that point, it's out of your control. You can't make yourself an appealing artist. You can make yourself you as an artist, and then hopefully that's appealing to a project, right? There was 2 questions. I'll start over there.
Sure. I have like a moral question.
Sure.
So as a game designer and also a musician, I want to use social media to brand myself.
Yes.
But I personally don't like certain social media. Would you try to like use all of them to increase your reach?
So should you use social media? I don't think so. I think choosing not to use social media is also a statement of honesty, right? And so
yeah.
I'm loud as fuck. I'm on all the social media. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Blue Sky, on anything that has reach. I'll put it on there. And that was part of my career, right? Like I was the visible indie for a long time, and that just kind of stuck with me. Would I like to delete all of them? Yeah, that'd be nice. At the same time, at this point, I feel a bit of a moral responsibility to keep doing what I'm doing because it's useful to others, and that's also very true to myself. To go like, listen, I don't want to do this, but it's good for others. Fuck it, I'll keep doing it. That's just a me problem. My therapist has many issues with that. But that's how it's going to go. Like this is me, and I'm okay with that. I'm at ease with that, and that's how I'm going to do it. But there are great artists who don't post anywhere, right? And there are people who have only one, so like only art portfolio sites, right? Like or back in the days it was DeviantArt or like any of those. Just that. That's fine too. Just do whatever you think works, but whichever way, you need to make sure that people know.
Exactly.
And so your options then become, you're going to do cold emailing. You're just going to email everybody. You're going to fill out every form. You're going to keep an eye on the market. Or you have to find another way of doing it. There are people who do once a year to do a video. That's it. That's their full social media presence. They'll just work, and at the end of the year do a video. Here's my reel. Here's the art. Here's the things I did. Video is fired. Everybody looks at them for 3 weeks. Then everybody goes away. But sometimes that's enough to get you a year for. So. There was a question in the back, yeah?
Yeah, you were talking about you can't just hire an artist.
Yep.
And I have a question, like, can an artist, for you, still show a lot of different work, but you can still see that who they are?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the artists I work with are multidisciplinary. They do 2D, 3D animation, sometimes even rigging, stuff like that. And that's good because sometimes I want to use some weird ass technology that allows me to rig up some 2D characters because that's fun, right? And so having those abilities is good. But what I want to understand is that you have an opinion about things.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody who just comes in and goes like, I went to school, I got 7s, hire me. I'm like, "Hey, cool, I guess, but like, I need a through line. And to a degree, having a through line in your work requires you to be aware of what the through line is, right? Like, yes, sometimes we can see it by accident, but very often, especially if you're coming in out of school or as a junior, we know there's a lot of work to be done with you before you're at industry level. Like, you're not going to come out of the school immediately ready to go into the work field. Every studio is its own bullshit, right? Whether it's the way they do version control, or the way they work with like assets, or the way they have leadership for like, or art direction, or the way they implement narrative, whether they use artistry or something else. Every studio is its own clusterfuck of bad decisions made in the past that we're still dealing with, right? And so you're never going to come in and be ready with that. We know there's work that we need to do. What we need is opinions, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to be an asshole about the opinions, but we need to be able to see it through line in the work to be able to do that. So I think to that degree, that's my answer to this question. If you want to figure out how to brand yourself, you have to figure out who you are, what's special about you, what sets you apart, and you need to be able to communicate that through your work. One more question over there?
Yeah. Is it, well, this is basically essentially two questions rolled into one. Is it desirable to mass market yourself, and, or rather, is it beneficial to try to mass market yourself, like to be that one indie dev that does all the live streams, that goes and has their banter, goes and etc.?
Is it desirable to be very visible, to mass market yourself?
Yes.
Yes and no. Yes, if that's the type of work you want to be doing. So shorter contracts, a little bit more rapid fire, that kind of thing, if that's the life you want, yeah, it's great. Derek Leo, who does trailers, is famous for trailers because he is posting everywhere that he does trailers and how he does trailers, and he teaches and he does all that. It's great. I do that, right? Like, I'm extremely visible in the work that I do and in the support that I have for other developers and trying to support indie studios. But it also means that I don't get a lot of huge clients that want to work with me for 6 months because they know I'm busy. So I'm too busy for them. And so I get a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, we didn't reach out to you because we thought you'd be busy. And I'm like, you're right, but also I wish you did reach out so that we could at least talk about what could be done. And again, I don't know. So there's pros and cons to everything, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is there's no objectively correct way of doing this. There's all the different ways of doing this. You just need to figure out which one works for you. So if you're not sure, try it. Maybe it's your vibe. Maybe you start doing it and you start feeling good about it, and you get inspiration out of it, and there's a sort of like playfulness that starts happening. And maybe you do it for like 2 months, you're like, no, this fucking sucks, and then just stop doing it. Like with everything, iteration is extremely powerful. So just try it, I'd say. I'm going to take 2 more questions on this one, and then I'm going to move on to the next question.
Yeah, what if you want to be that first? So you said there need to be like a throughput of your work,
yeah,
like a bit of what makes you you.
Yeah.
But what if you want to step out of your, what is it, English?
Comfort zone.
Comfort zone,
yeah,
and like try everything.
So the funny thing about trying everything is that it's never everything.
No,
right?
a lot.
A lot, right? You like experimenting.
Yeah.
That's sort of the thing. You can make that very clear in your work. That can be a very clear through line that you just have.
Is of itself through line.
Yeah, experimentation is a through line. My work is very, like, if you look at Lambert's work, we've never done the same genre twice. Right? We did a fishing game, airplane game, platformer game, top-down roguelike. We did a turn-based strategy game. We have a game about doing karate. We have a game about hunting a yeti on a snowy mountain. Which we have a first-person shooter about gangster rap. We had like, none of it makes sense unless you start looking at like, we were experimenting with the ways you can put like the feeling of 2 things hitting each other. That was very Metal Gear Solid. The feeling of 2 things hitting each other into games, because that was what Lambert enjoyed. We liked making a shotgun feel good. So, is there a through line in the game? No. Do all of them have explosions? Yeah. Yes. Because that was what we like doing. We like making things feel nice. So, no, experimentation is 100% a through line. You just have to think about, okay, what are you experimenting towards? Because it's never as broad as everything. That's kind of like the same thing I'm trying to say. It's like, there is something you're looking for in this experiment. And it might be like, you just want to try a lot of things, but like, to what purpose? Like, what is there? What makes you interested in that? Because there's also people who just do it because they don't feel good about anything that they do. There are people who do it because they are scared of judgment if they stay in one style for too long. There's a million reasons to want to try different things, but it sounds to you it's just a choice out of interest. So what's the interest? That's the question then, right? Cool. I have one.
I suggest to continue on because.
All right. We'll have questions afterwards. Sorry about that. Blind spots looking up at the industry. So in the industry, the first one, like I said, is very much we need you to have an opinion. School does not prepare you for that. School will never prepare you for that because they can't prepare you for that. You need to figure your own shit out. The second one is I don't give a fuck how good you are at your job if you're not good to work with. So the ability to work in a team is one of your biggest weaknesses, generally, if you're coming out of school. That has nothing to do with you or not being a good collaborator. It is that school cannot replicate the situation that you have in a studio. If somebody here on the team doesn't work well, you can't fire them. There's no performance meeting, there's none of that. So if you have a person on your team who's just fucking around, then the school advisor is going to be like, well, work with that. Let me tell you, that's not how we do it in the industry. If somebody is shit, they go, whoop, and they find a new job, right? So, or they don't find a new job usually, because reputation goes pretty fast in this industry. The important thing, learn to communicate. And if I say learn to communicate, I don't mean with people like yourself, I mean with everybody else. So if you're a programmer, chances are, and this is not, I'm not going to say that this is for every programmer, I'm a programmer. The way I and many of my programmer friends look at the world is very systemic. So we look at things as systems. I wonder about the cables in the roof, I wonder about how they run, I wonder where the button is, I wonder if it's a parallel or a serial. I wonder if there's another button somewhere in the room that can turn the light off while that one is on. My brain can't help it. It just does that. It wants to see the system in everything, right? It also means that my thinking is usually very top-down. I try to figure out the system, I work all the way to the top, and then I try to extrapolate from there all the way back down. That's also how I build, because I'm a programmer. I want to do a thing, let me abstract that all the way back up until it makes sense, create that structure, build the thing, now have a structure that can also allow me to put a rotating knob instead of just flipping knob, right? Can't help it. Artists, in my experience, very different look at the world. Tend to start from feeling, from color, from warmth, from emotion, try to figure out their way up to like, okay, how do we hone in on that, how do I communicate that? And then use very unmeasurable ways of achieving that, in my optic. Now an artist would disagree with that. They would say, no, there's logic to what we're doing. We're picking these choices with a reason, but I'm not an artist. And so my favorite moment early on in my career came when one of the artists that I was working with came to me and said, hey, okay, so you know this character, when they attack, it needs to have a little bit of a whoosh. What the fuck does that mean? And they were serious. They said, yeah, it needs whoosh. And that made so much sense to them. They're like, yeah, it's missing the whoosh. I don't even know how to begin to program whoosh. Like, is it an arc? Is it like, what is it like, is it, do you want like, is it a VFX? They're like, no, it needs to just, you know, like a, oh my God, I don't know what to fucking do about this, right? And so we sat for like 15 minutes trying to figure out what they meant with whoosh. Right? They meant sort of like after the attack, there needed to be sort of like a streak. But then ahead of it, there needed to be a little bit of a push. So you get this nice little like, whoosh, obviously, right? Neither of us was wrong. We're both correct. Whoosh is completely obvious when you see the end result. I call it a whoosh now, right? But at that time, I had no idea what that meant, right? And so between us, between all of us, you'll find that all of our brains work slightly differently, and that the people that are in our discipline tend to be a little closer to the way we think than the people outside of our discipline. Getting better at that communication is a massive boost to your ability to make good games. Because you're always going to be working across disciplines. It doesn't matter what your job is going to be, unless you're going to be a solo developer, in which case, you know, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But communication is one of the biggest things that we're going to look for in your work. That also means your communication on your portfolio. So I need you to write your portfolio thinking of the other person. Who's going to be reading your portfolio, and how do you imagine their day looks? Have you ever taken that moment when you're making your resume or your portfolio? Have you ever taken a moment to stop and go, okay, what does the life of the person who's going to start reading this look like? Have you imagined them sitting there at like 9:30 in the morning with their coffee, in like a baggy t-shirt, kind of tired, rubbing their eyes and going, okay, number 14. Have you had that moment? Because if you haven't, that's a really easy way to improve your communication. Think of the other person. Who's on the other side and what do they need? I really don't need a beautiful narrative about how you started your career. Don't give a shit. And I would in a one-to-one conversation. Don't give a shit when I'm reading your resume. I just need to know what you're good at, that you can do the job that I need, that you can communicate well, that you can think about communication, and that you're going to do work that fits my project or my needs. That's the stuff that I need. I'm gonna take fewer questions to make sure we make it to 10. But we'll have time for questions at the end. Is that okay? So if there's a very urgent question where you're like, wait, I really don't get that, just raise your hand, I'll get to it. But it's more of a little bit of extra depth would be nice here. Let's keep it for the end. You have an urgent question.
Sort of, I was wondering, you said earlier, you really need to communicate, like what sets you apart.
Yeah.
And now you're sort of saying, like, I just need to know, like, what you're good at.
Which is what sets you apart.
Okay, right, so
that's
just the same.
What you're good at and what sets you apart are the same thing. Which sounds weird, but it is the thing that makes you different. And the thing that makes you different is the thing you're good at because you have natural interest in it, right? So if that's experimentation, you're going to be experimenting. If that is specific art style, you're going to be much better at that art style than any other one. Like, it's kind of natural, we can't help it. We have interests, and so my interests are mine, and none of you can make the games I make, not because you're not good, or not because you're not potentially even better than me, just because you ain't me. So I'm going to beat you on my games every single time, and that's the way I make sure that I have a job, because I managed to prove that there's an audience for that, right? This is the same for you. Like, if you can prove that some people hire you based on the things you're doing, then you're employed. And until you do, technically, you're not yet. So, trying to think about how you communicate you doesn't change that you're communicating you. The thing you have to avoid is that you're trying to communicate something that you are not to try and get the job, right? So that's the distinction there, if that makes sense. Communication is the biggest one. The final thing, and this sounds super obvious, but like, go meet people. Go to events, at the Gamescom, come to Indigo, go to the network lunch, go to things. I'm introverted as shit. I can't express how much I hate being in large groups of people most of the time. And I love the energy of it, right? I love, like, if you all have questions for me at the end of this, I'm not going to be upset that you have questions at the end of this, because I like helping. But my God, at the end of today, when I get home, I'm going to fall asleep immediately. Because it's a lot. It's just a lot. I'm a programmer. I'm a shy kid. I don't know what to tell you. This is not my natural. This is an act I got really good at over 15 years of doing this. But I genuinely, if I could just hide, I would, right? I still have to go and meet people. Because that's the only way to let people know that you exist with your unique combination of things you're good at and things you're interested in, things that are interesting about it. So you have to go meet people, and I don't care whether you do it online, offline, game jams, whatever you do, but go meet people. Go meet people in the industry. Not each other, because you already know each other, and that doesn't mean that you should meet each other, please meet each other, but like people that are doing the work right now, right? The work that you want to be doing. If you have a hero, somebody you look up to, somebody whose work you admire, send them an email. Why not? Right? And don't send them the usual, like, hey, we have an assignment where I have to ask 10 questions, because most developers fucking hate that. We'll do it out of courtesy because we did the same thing back in the days. But just like, hey, you posted this art piece. I love the color in it. Just wanted to say that. I'm a student. Wanted to say I love this art piece. Love the colors in it. Hope that later I get to do stuff like that. Cool. We'll read it. You'll make our day, which is one. And B, if we have the energy for it, we'll answer. If we don't answer, it's not because we hate you and we hate you forever. It's just, holy shit, we have a lot of shit. Right? So just send the fucking email. Send the LinkedIn invite. Like, genuinely, nobody in the industry is going to be like, oh, fuckers. Like, we're not going to hate you. It's just, no. It's cool to meet other people who do what we do, right? Urgent question?
Yeah, just like a question. As an industry professional, is there another industry professional you look up to?
There's so many industry professionals I look up to. I think that's the thing, right? Like, everybody's good at something else. So, okay, 3 people that I look up to in the games industry. I really admire, actually this is funny, I really admire Warren Spector, who did Deus Ex, which he would hate if I say that, because he's the guy who said, please don't attribute a game to one person. But I love how grumpy he is. He's just grumpy. He imagined the games industry 20 years ago that was not this games industry. He imagined that the improvement in computing power would go towards telling more dynamic stories instead of making better graphics. And he still believes in that games industry 20 years later, despite everything having gone against him. And now, it's sort of like starting to roll over because graphics have sort of hit a bit of a peak, right? Like our compute is not getting much better. So now people are like, how can we tell stories in more interesting? So Baldur's Gate 3, he did a little dance about that. Like that's the most exciting thing to him. And so I love that he picked the thing, and it's just the thing he's good at, and whether he's making Epic Mickey or Deus Ex or whatever he's doing right now, that's the thing he does. Richard Lamarchand at the USC in California, he worked on Uncharted 2, he's a teacher now. He was the one who recommended I get a therapist, actually. And that sounds funny, but he recommended it by saying that he has a therapist. And I asked him if anything was wrong in his life, he said, no, that's why I have a therapist. Like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Like, why get it after the shit's fucked up? They said that's basically the thing, right? Like, I have a therapist, they know exactly my life, they know me, and so if something starts going the wrong way, they can catch it and stop me from getting there. He said, you should do it. You're on the stage all the time, you're a public figure, people have opinions about you, are you okay? And I'm like, I had never thought about that question, but now that I think about it, no, I'm not okay. And he said, okay, get a therapist. And so I've been doing therapy for that reason. He's a sweetheart. He's a very soft, very kind, very tall man. He wrote a book called A Playful Production Process, which I will recommend to everybody, if you haven't read it. Incredible book. Incredible person in general. Who would be a good third? No, not Hideo Kojima.
Oh, man.
No. I appreciate some of his work.
Yeah, I don't agree with a lot of them, but yeah.
You know that there is. So I met a very long time ago. And it's funny that these are going to end up 3 fairly veteran industry people. But I met Amy Hennig a very long time ago. I think the thing about Amy is that she is very kind, very collaborative, but also she was so good at sort of like explaining why a feeling is or happened, right? She looked at things from this perspective that I think you can only get to if you've been in leadership for a longer amount of time, but you've not lost your way through power, which happens frequently, right? And so I think the thing I appreciated about her was that she would always take the time for everybody. She would always sit down, she would always have a very thoughtful conversation, and then she would always, when she would walk away, she would always be like, okay, that's enough. And she would just kind of walk away, and I recognized that feeling. And it was that she wouldn't hide any of her feelings or her emotions, but she would always try and be kind and sort of like explain. So she kind of felt like a very good teacher. You know, like one that you can just go to and ask a question and they'll sit down and explain it to you, but also they're okay with going like, that's a great question, why didn't you figure that out? And then you go like, I asked you, and she'd be like, yeah, but I think this would be a better answer if you figured it out. And I love that about how she approached teaching. So I think she was very inspirational to me as a method of teaching. Right? Reloading again. I'm going to go fast before everybody else kicks me off the stage, because I can see him certainly. I almost made it halfway in 90% of the time, so we're doing well. The process of greenlighting a game is actually not that dissimilar from branding yourself, right? I believe a game consists of 3 layers. The layers are very simple. At the heart of it, you have a core. Around that, you have your mechanics. Around that, you have your declaration. Now, you've probably not been taught this model, but you might have been taught a similar model, the MDA framework. Mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, right? I think that framework has its uses, but I don't like the way it makes us think about games. I think the most valuable thing about the MDA framework is that dynamics cannot be designed easily. You can design mechanics, you can design aesthetic. Dynamics is the result of those 2 interfacing with each other, right? So I understand the feeling of the game, I understand the purpose of the mechanics. Those two together make me act a certain behavior. That's the MBA framework. I think that part is great. Core mechanics declarative is a little bit more, I don't know, direct, I guess. The mechanical layer of a game is the rules. Just the rules. It's just the way you can input things and then things happen, right? The declarative layer is the way we explain the rules. Those add meaning to our rules. If you want a good example, play Monopoly. If you take Monopoly and turn it into mechanics, there's no cars, there's no cities, there's no money. There's tokens, there's resources, there's your location, there's locations. Locations have an ownership. The ownership is one of the players, and that ownership was gained by exchanging a certain amount of tokens in exchange for ownership. Somebody else lands on a tile that you own, then they have to pay a certain amount of tokens, right? That's Monopoly without declaration. If we change the declaration and we say this is Lion King Monopoly, then it's not about being a brutal landlord trying to exchange, like, you know, squeeze the last bit of money out of everybody else. No, it's about becoming the king of the savannah. It's actually kind of sweet. You're not trying to destroy each other, you're just protecting areas. Same game, completely different feeling, right? That's the declarative layer. At the heart of everything is a core. And so for core, I want you to think about the game you're making, and I want you to think about what you're trying to achieve with it. And so very often with students, I see one of two types of games. The first one is, here's a bunch of genres. We're making an action roguelike adventure game. Like 40% of the games industry, right? Or it is a very high concept. So we're making a game about love. As a whole, I guess, right? Both of those are not good cores. I would argue that a core is very simple. It is an abstract feeling, or a moment in a game, that delivers a feeling. And it is just that. So, I use God of War as an example, the recent ones. And I use God of War as an example because I love how contradictory the core feels from the gameplay. What is God of War about? The recent ones, with Kratos and Atreus. He's being a dad. But what specifically about being a dad? I'm going to be the 4-year-old. What about being a dad? What about being a parent? Any ideas? Yeah?
Would you say that, so this is a guess, but being a dad and then the role of your son is growing older?
Yeah, there's a little bit of conflict there in Atreus growing older, right? But what about Atreus getting older is the problem for Kratos here?
I think that being a role model.
Being a role model, we're getting closer.
I remember this video, and it's pretty much he does not want his son to end up like as big of a monster as he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kratos is good at one thing, which is murder. And that's the thing he's been good at his entire life. Right? That's the thing he excels at. And there is not a single problem in the world of God of War that Kratos cannot solve by just ripping its head off. Right? And he consistently does that throughout the entire God of War trilogy. That's kind of his big deal, is he can murder things any which way. Right? Whether that includes knives, axes, his hands, magic, whatever, it doesn't matter. Thing bad, thing dies. Right? Atreus isn't that. Atreus is innocent, curious. He hasn't been through the wars that Kratos has been through. His parents haven't been murdered by the Pantheon. Like, he is okay. He's growing up. And he doesn't want to murder stuff. He has a hard time murdering a deer in the first, 2 minutes of that game. He doesn't want to do it because he believes in the sanctity of life. So even for hunting, he doesn't want to. And then they get a conflict. They need to bring the ashes of Atreus' mother and Kratos' ex-wife to the land of the giants. And it turns out that a lot of people disagree with that journey. Right? I don't want to get in the way of that. So Kratos solves that the only way he knows how. Murder a lot of shit. Atreus doesn't really want to do that, but also wants to achieve his goals. And so he's starting to see in his father the way of solving problems. Kratos doesn't want that. So at the heart of God of War, we have a very simple conflict. Kratos does not understand how to raise Atreus to be anything but what he is. Because he doesn't know any other way. He doesn't know how to be curious, he doesn't know how to be smart, he just knows that there are creative ways of murdering things if the straightforward way of murdering those things doesn't work, right? How do you tell that story with the gameplay? How do you tell the story that Kratos is the very best at just murdering the shit out of things?
I think it rolls out of the combat. This skill tree is focused on killing people. Like you cannot do. There are like no fast or anything that encourage you to.
The entire game just points at killing people, yes, or creatures.
Yeah, I figured, well, to be honest, I haven't played it, but I figured that making the combat feel effortless on the part of the player.
Making the combat feel effortless, and I would say, on top of that, brutal. Kratos is brutal. There's no, so that thing in the documentary, if you watch it, where the way the axe works is when it connects with an enemy, the IK of the axe actually stops, but the arm animation continues, and then the IK catches up, so you get this nice little like, kind of feeling. On every hit. Why do we do that? Why did they do that? What was the goal of that?
That actually reminds me of a really old lecture Young Women put out.
Yeah.
I remember I watched it a few years ago when I was working on like small arcade game.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said was, if you kill an enemy, I don't know why this works, but it just does, put in time.speed for a small indeterminate amount of time, and it just increases the feel of whatever happens. And I feel like I've kind of narrowed it down, because I experimented with the game before and after doing that, and it really felt like the brain doesn't really process it, but it kind of just feels like, or you physically don't process it, but if you give your brain like a small amount of time to think, like, this just happens, it gives your actions slightly more weight.
Yeah. So hit stop as an ability emphasizes impact. It gives you a moment to process that impact that you otherwise wouldn't have. It gives your brain a moment to see that for a moment longer. Why is it so important that Kratos feels powerful? The argument, the simple argument, is that if Kratos could be defeated in combat, the argument would be that if only he was better at combat, then things would be okay with Atreus. But things cannot be okay with Atreus through combat. Kratos needs to win every single time, and even if he loses, you need to lose in such a spectacular way that you are worried for the other person in the rematch, not for him. He's gonna be fine. He's the god of war. He's gonna fuck shit up anyway, right? And so every piece of combat needs to feel incredible. And why does it need to feel incredible? So we can tell a story about love, right? That's the core of a game. The core of a game doesn't have to be about the game itself. It can be about the world, it can be about the story, it can be narrative, it can be declarative, it can be mechanical, it doesn't matter. In a good game, everything points in one direction, and that direction is towards the core. So what's the core of your game? What's the thing that you're building? I don't give a shit what genre it is. You could have made that game as a racing game. It will be a little harder, but you could, right? You could make any game about any feeling. You picked a game because you wanted to achieve something. And sure, you might have looked and been like, well, these kind of games are popular, or I'm curious about this type of game, but that's never the full answer. Because if you decide to make a platformer, you're still making a very specific platform. Why is it 2D? Because you're good at 2D, sure, okay. But what about 2D? Why were you interested in 2D, right? Why did you get there? And why are you not experimenting with 3D? If you've never done 3D before. Just keep asking these questions, figure out what the core is. Same thing applies as finding out your own brand. Ask yourself why. If something feels wrong, figure out why. It's all about why, right? Mechanical needs to point inwards, needs to point at the core. Declarative needs to point inwards, needs to point at the core. And as soon as you start thinking as games as a really bad method of lying to people, you become a better game designer. We're liars. My job is to lie to people. In fact, my job is to get paid to lie to people so that they will have feelings. All of us here are in the business of bullshit. Baldur's Gate isn't real. That city doesn't exist. Shadowheart isn't real. More than Solus isn't real. and people and things exist. We paid somebody to lie to us so we could believe those things were real, and we worked with them. We allowed them to lie to us. We accepted the lie because it is better that way. So your job is to lie. So if you want to make a hard game, it doesn't have to be hard, it just needs to feel hard. If you want to make a boss fight with a 10% chance of an item dropping, please don't make it 10%. That sucks. You know what 10% means? It means that you could play that 5 million times and not get it. That is a 100% valid outcome of a 10% drop chance. So every time it doesn't drop, add a percent. Don't tell the player. Oh, it's a trick, it's a lie. It's just between us, right? Coyote time, a moment too late before you jump. No, we'll give it to you. Shooter games, do you ever get shot in the back in shooter games? Single player shooter games? No, of course not. You know why not? That fucking sucks. If you get shot from behind, they always miss. FIFA, goalkeepers are worse than the last 5 minutes of a match. Why? Because we like last minute goals. We lie. Lie. Stop trying to make the thing that you're saying. Give people the promise. What is your promise? What's the core? What's the feeling? And then build that beautiful life. Right? For me, I greenlight a game the moment the lie makes sense. So there are games that I work on for months and I can't get to the lie. The lie of one of my games was I wanted to make a game with a grappling hook with a gun on it. So I thought that would be awesome. You would just throw your grappling hook and then there would be a gun at the end of the grappling hook and then you could already shoot enemies in the next room. Great idea, because I thought it would give this very dynamic gameplay. You know what it did? Not that. What happened instead is people would throw their hook and then just murder everything in the next room and then go. So I added a timer to it to fix it, right? Like, okay, throw the thing, shoot, they go in. Felt a little awkward, right? So why not just get the gun or get slow motion? And there was the game with the banana, I forgot what it's called. But it kind of did that mechanic where you go like go through the window and the slow motion happens a bit blue on its page. Sorry? Yeah, that's the one, yeah. And I just looked at them like, I can't get to this. I can't, like, I know the feeling I want, but I can't get to the feeling, and I can't even put the feeling into words, so I killed it. It's dead. Next one, right? And this happened all the time. I have a graveyard of game ideas where I couldn't get to the promise of it. But for me, the first thing to figure out when I have a prototype is what is the promise. And so for Lufthansa, it's a little airplane game. We made the airplane, that was cool, and then we needed a level. And we were lazy as fuck, so we just said it's above the sea, so we could just make one single line, and that's the level. And you know what everybody did? They flew as close to the line as possible. You're right. Maybe we should put some splashes on the water. You know when you fly in the air, like cool splash effects happen? So we added splash effects. You know what happened? Everybody did more. And as people started doing stunts over the water, they started doing movies. They were like, this is a game about being cool. This is a game about being the badass fighter pilot from an anime. What if we made that game? And so we leaned into that promise. We were like, okay, Lufthansa is a game about a pilot who takes off for the very last time. They're never going to land. They're not going to survive this mission. But they're going to be fucking badass about it. And that's the game. That's it. That's the promise. You're never going to land. Make it cool. Right? And so if you play Lufthansa, every decision in that game points at that very simple thing. It has to be cool. If it's not cool, it's out. Who decides what's cool? We does. So, old anime, comic books, old movies, stuff with Tom Cruise in it, that stuff. That's cool. Right? Anything else? If we didn't think it's cool, it's not in the game. So the myth here, the myth of work-life study balance is you're not actually supposed to do all this at once. This is insane. This is bonkers. The whole idea that you need to figure out your life and your work and your studying at the same time is utter bullshit. By the time I was 30, I had to figure out shit about life because I spent my entire time doing work, right? And you could say, well, you could have had a better work-life balance. No, I was doing fine. I worked okay hours. I burned out a few times because I was an idiot. But yeah, I mean, I was self-employed, right? Nobody was forcing me to crunch. It was just me being interested in the things I'm doing and going like, I don't need sleep. I do. Turns out I really, really, really do. This is what happens when all of us get graded by a number system called money. and there's less and less money to distribute among all of us. Then you get this one. So we're basically playing a losing game, and I don't want to pretend that it's different than this. This is unachievable. So the trick isn't how do I achieve this, the trick is which choices do I make for me. I think there is something to be said for saying, okay, at this part of my life I have an opportunity to take some risks with the games I'm making to figure out who I am and what I do. So I'm going to lean more on work and study and maybe a little less on life. But there's also a very valid argument to make that you become a better game designer by spending more time just living life. That going on a trip or spending time with friends will make you better at making stuff. So I don't have the answer for you. The thing I can tell you is that when you start feeling tired, when you start waking up with a headache, when you start feeling dehydrated all the time, when you start feeling anxious about your work, treat it as a red fucking flag. Not a small one. That's the you are past the station when things start hurting, right? The way burnout was explained to me was very simple. It's a loan. You have a bank of your mental wellness. The bank of mental wellness pays you mental wellness points, I guess, to do stuff. And then hopefully through rest and through enjoyment and through fun and through achievement, it gets refilled. So if you're doing very motivational work, you always have a bit of a surplus coming in, right? When you start pushing past the point where you can replenish it every day, you start losing a little bit of, what's the number? Balance on the account. And the balance keeps going down and down and down until at some point it goes into the negative. That's that moment I'm talking about. You start feeling it, right? Something in you feels it's wrong. And we tend to push it. We're like, oh, we'll take an extra weekend and it'll go fine. No, you won't. Let's be honest with each other. Almost none of us do. We always promise ourselves that we will and we don't. You got it. You got it for a very simple reason. That negative balance, it accrues interest. So as you go, the amount of negative balance you have grows faster and faster. The burnout is the moment. The interest is larger than the replenishment. So you are getting less energy back than just the interest. And then it spirals. I will tell you, very simple, what burnout means, if you've never had one. To me, burnout meant that after Ridiculous Fishing was cloned, when I would open my laptop, when the cursor would blink, it would feel like somebody was hitting me in the head with an axe. Like right here. Every time. Every time there was a blink. Like, shot of pain starts here, shot down my spine. I could not use a computer. I could not look at a computer. I could not stand to be behind a computer for more than 10, 15 minutes, right? It took me 6 months. In that time, Flamper almost went under. Jan Willem also had a burnout, because just like me, he pushed himself too hard, right? In the end, 6 months was what it took. After that, I was never the same at all. I still am not. I had a second burnout. That one took 2 years. I never recovered from that one either. I still do my work, but I'm incredibly fucking careful. If I feel tired, I take a break. If this is unachievable, it's not about doing all of it. It's about choosing which ones matter at which time, right?
You're on the next slide over.
This one. It was just like, no, go to the next slide. Do the next slide, yeah.
Keep the time in mind.
Yeah, I have it. I have 23 minutes.
One quick note, if it also seemingly seems that everything is okay, well past the point where things should be okay, that's also a red flag.
Yeah, we're really good at lying to ourselves. It's basically the summary of that. We're really good at being like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, but I'm curious, it's worth it to test your limits in this way, right? Like, oh, I had this.
It is worth it to find your limits. It's not necessarily worth it to test your limits. Like finding your limits is sort of like getting to the point where you're like, oh, I'm starting to feel it, and at that point you're at the station, right? So that's the point where you take the train back instead of going like, oh yeah, I found it. Let's see if I can go one more. This is not a roguelike. There are people who go into a burnout and never get out of it, right? For me, the thing that got me was I spent from the age of 6 to the age of 23 trying to make a successful game. Ridiculous Fishing was the game that took me from being a developer that had some money, or no money, because I grew up poor as shit, to being a person with a game studio that had large revenues. That was the point where I burned out. It took me 16 years to become successful at my job, and I fucked it up in the first 6 months. Horrifying. Honestly, scariest feeling, and I say that being an Alphenaar, for those of you who know what that is, there's a town called Alphen aan de Rijn. There was a mall shooting in Alphen aan de Rijn. I was at the mall shooting in Alphen aan de Rijn. I will tell you, that was a less scary feeling than burnout. I would rather go back to that situation than fear that the rest of my life I'm not going to be able to do the thing that I love. Because if I got shot right there, that would have been it. Sucks for everybody else, but for me it would. The idea that I could be in a situation where I have a thing that I love and I know that I love it and I can't ever do it again because I fucked it up, no, fuck no. No, I don't know how to deal with that. So, I cannot emphasize how fucked up burnouts feel. So, just don't. Figure out where your limits are, and then go back. Please go back. You know, no project is worth you. Yeah.
I was wondering, you were talking a lot about the work-life balance, about work being the imbalance.
Yeah.
But could you have sort of user experience or insight in when life is more of the bigger issue to work?
Breakups, travel, tough times in family, people passing away, like yeah, all of those, it's the same thing. Like burnout is a function of not feeling reward or motivation towards the things that you're doing while burning oil that you don't have, right? So it's actually funny, if you're feeling great about your work, it's much harder to burn out. Same thing, if you feel great about life, it's much harder to burn out. When any of these factors happen in your life, there's a joke that says, how do you find out that somebody's a pilot? And the answer is they tell you, I'm a pilot. I fly small airplanes. And I hate telling that, but one of the rules for flying an airplane is you have to check whether you're mentally okay. It's a self-check. You go, am I stressed? Am I anxious? Do I feel alert, right? Like, there's an abbreviation called SAFE. You kind of, as sort of like a checklist. Life is no different from work in the way it affects you. Study is no different from work. I think one of the things I learned sort of like in my last years at the HACU was I could also just say, listen, I can't do that. It sounds weird, but a lot of teachers are fine with you going like, listen, I can't keep this up, I need a little bit of extra time. It's the not telling them that creates an issue. And if any teacher is giving you shit about you being at a burnout and they don't give you an extension for your work, please call me. I promise you I will yell at them. I will personally go visit them and yell at them. I know the people at the top, they're like, I will fuck them up, like, don't you worry. Because it's not fair. And it shouldn't be that way, right? Cool, I'm gonna keep moving for you, this burns me. Tools and stuff like that, I will be very honest because this is actually a very easy question. I believe in just trying all of them. Like genuinely, that's my answer to what tools should you use. When people start in games, when they start working as a programmer or designer, they ask me which engine should I use, and my answer is download all of them and make Pac-Man in each. That's it, make the same game in every single engine you can find, any single engine that you're interested in, see which one fits your brain. There's people with Blender brains, there's people with Maya brains, there's people with there's people with Godot brains, there's people with Unity brains, and there's people with Unreal, there's people with Game Maker brains. Right? Like all of those are there, all of those are valid. Whatever works for you, fuck yeah, let's go. And so there are people who don't like any of them because that's not how their brain works. Their brain works in a way where they want to have full control of the full stack. Those are usually programmers, I have to be honest with you. But for those programmers, that is a valid exercise. Build your own tech stack, see how that works, see what the choices are that you're making, so that every other tech stack you look at, you can see the choices that they made and understand who it was made for. So when it comes to this, frankly, just try them. I think we need to stop being afraid of making wrong choices. I don't think such a thing exists. If you're, no, okay, that's not right. There is such a thing as wrong choices. But in general, you're not going to be making wrong choices. You're not going to be looking at things and being like, okay, this is a bottle of detergent, or this is a Coca-Cola, I'm going to drink that one. Nobody makes those choices, right? We make the choices that we believe will have the best outcome in our life. And so, acting in hindsight like you could have made a better choice is bullshit. It's unfair to you. Like, I think regret as an emotion is is sneaky and insidious and painful. Because it's meant to teach us. But instead of that, a lot of us take this punishment. It's not a punishment, it's just your brain going like, I could have done better there. And then the honest truth is you couldn't, because you hadn't gotten to the regret yet that taught you how to do better. So I firmly believe all your choices are the best choice you can possibly make. So if you pick Unity right now and you regret it in a year, okay, let's try the next one. Right and wrong, kind of similarly, are objective measurements. They don't apply to creative work. Pick a thing, do it, see if it's fun. If it's not fun, fuck it, next one. I love my job. I love what I do. I love game development. I love the people. I love a lot about it. It's work, right? I very often hear people say like, oh yeah, it's not really a job because I love it, or I like it. It's not what I do. It's what I am. No. My entire life is video games. Since the age of 6, it's been video games. I had to learn through lots of pain that it's not what I am, it's what I do. And I love what I do. I don't have to make it bigger than that, but I also love a lot of other things, right? And so I think, to a degree, this feeling of like, this is our full purpose, this is our only purpose, is the thing that we kind of communicate as an industry in a really weird way, a kind of insidious way, of like the feeling of like family, of like shared hardship, of like crunch, of like all of these sort of like ideas that are there to sort of prove that we really want it. It's a fucking job, y'all. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I love this job. I think it's the greatest job I could have. I wouldn't know what other job I would do in my life. I don't think I'm good at anything else. I love this. But also, I can sell computers at MediaMarkt. I did for 4 years, had a great time, learned to negotiate. It was awesome, right? And so, I think this idea that it has to work out in one go is one that I'm always very careful about. Because, as in the back was mentioned, that's not really the reality for a lot of people right now. It's not a reality for a lot of people that are in the industry right now, that this is an eternal job that just continues through your entire life. I think I can count on 2 hands the amount of people that I know that have retired, having worked only in the games industry their entire life. Like that. It's rare. It's incredibly rare. It's not a problem. If you love doing this, you'll love doing it in any context, whether you can do it full-time or employed or for a salary is a second question. But I think as soon as you let go that it has to be that. A lot of people from my year at the HU ended up working for banks, ended up working for cybersecurity, ended up working in architecture firms, or ended up working in advertisement, ended up working in film music, ended up working in weird therapeutic software that allows you to meditate together with sound. Some of them ended up at MBA companies. Like, people went everywhere, right? And I think the thing that I remember is I was in South Africa at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And I used to give a talk there every year. And there was this little woman about this tall. Her name was Hanli Geyser. And Hanli would bring me to talk to her class every year, and it was sort of one of the last things to do. Kind of like this, actually, kind of like one of the last things of the year. And Hanli would always just stand in the back and just sort of like smile at the talk and like at the students and sort of what was happening. And then one year, one of the students raised their hands and said, "Should I also drop out of school?" I'd been giving talks for a while, and so I knew that there was a diplomatic answer. And the diplomatic answer, the correct answer to that question is generally, if you have to ask me, then no. And if no matter what answer I gave you, you were going to do it anyway, then sure. But I cannot give you permission to quit school. I cannot give you I cannot take any of the accountability for that decision away from you. This is your choice. And she disappeared the moment I said that. And when I came off stage, a woman this short grabbed me by the collar and went, "If you ever tell any of my students ever again that there is any good reason to drop out of school, you will never come to Johannesburg again." And I went, wait, stop. She's like, "No, you don't get it. You're from the Netherlands. If you go to school and you do something and you don't get a job, you'll be okay. Will it be awesome? No. But there's government, there's programs, there's other jobs, there's employment all around. You know what this program is? About the games program there? This is not a games program. This is an IT program. We teach people how to use computers so that they can get a job in an economy that is working, because there is no games industry. These kids want to learn games, and we teach them games. We teach them game making, we teach them Unity, we teach them all the skills that they need. But the Trojan horse here is that they come out good communicators, able to execute creative vision, able to realize it on the computer. That's the goal. If they leave this school without a diploma, they will have nothing. Because there is no government in Johannesburg that will take care of them. There's drugs. And not simple drugs, like no, bring guns kind of drugs. Like work with armored vans to communicate kind of drugs, right? And I've never thought about it. I never thought about the fact that if things didn't work out, that I have options. You have options. You'll be okay, right? And the industry will be there, and games will be there, and if it's not the full-time thing you do right out of school, believe me, you can make some cool games. The amount of people that are doing games that become super successful as a side gig, outside of the stability of another job, is massive. So I wouldn't be too romantic about the idea that it has to work out right at the gate. Keep making cool stuff, keep figuring yourself out, keep figuring out what you like doing, what you love doing. Build, collaborate, stay in touch with people. Hopefully you'll get a job right out of the gate. Hopefully you'll make your indie studio right out of the gate. Maybe your first game will be a hit game and you'll be a millionaire and you can tell me, no, fuck no, it worked out. I would love that, I would love that. I'd like, make me so happy to hear. But if the story is like this and I have to find a job to do the thing, I'm working on a little project on the side, I can put 2 hours a day, like 3 days a week. It's not going very fast, but it's shaping up, I would also be super happy. I would just hate to lose you to the idea that it has to go in one go, and then you burn out and you hate the industry and you never come back. That's a much worse outcome to me. Then we'll figure it out as we go. Cool. Okay. He didn't give me angry eyes. Being a minority in the games industry is a very interesting place to be because the industry is an old system. Right, it's 60 years old at this point, 70 years old, 80 years old, almost. And things like GDC are reaching like 3 decades of age. The industry traditionally is very American, European, and Japanese, right? And so a number of those cultural truths have sort of made it. The industry in the West, at least, is still, sadly, sort of overwhelmingly American, cisgender, white, able-bodied, you know, the whole list. But this industry, let me try and correct that. The people in this industry tend to be fairly open-minded. The people in this industry try to do the right thing. And I think a lot of us try to do the right thing because, let's be frank, we have a job that's very easy to bully when you're younger. Like our personalities are creative, are a little bit extravagant, are a little bit curious, and that doesn't always go well. So I think to a degree, being in games teaches you that you're kind of an outsider at the start, and that you kind of have to find your place in the world anyway, right? I don't know about you, but for me, being at the HKU was the first time I felt like I met friends that understood me. That was just a feeling I had, right? And so to me, that was an amazing feeling, like, oh my God, I'm not the only one, holy fuck, that's awesome. And nobody cared whether I was Muslim or not, right? Nobody cared about that because we were just happy that we could make the Zelda sounds at each other. And people were going, yeah, I get what that is, right? That's and then when Metal Gear Solid ringtone goes off, we all go like, ooh, like that's, you know, that was good enough. That was good enough. The industry is not like that. The people want to be that, but the industry is old. It's focused on a very specific group of relatively rich people. And so I think that the examples that I always find as a Muslim is I don't drink. And I'm not, there's no judgment here about if somebody drinks and they're Muslim, I don't care, that's your thing between you and Allah. But I don't drink, right? And so for me, that meant that going to industry parties fucking sucked. Because I will give you a quote, an actual quote that I got. The quote that I got was, "I don't trust anybody who doesn't drink." Because if you don't dare to drink, if you don't dare to lower your guards, then you have something to hide. That's the shit I have to deal with, right? Or at A3, it would be a Ramadan. And during Ramadan, we don't eat or drink during the day. A3 was mostly lunch meetings and dinner meetings. And so I would go to a lunch and I would message them, "Hey, just so you know, it's Ramadan, so I won't be eating or drinking." And they would go like, "Oh no, we wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable." Like, fucker, I just told you I'm going to dinner. If I was uncomfortable, I would tell you I'm uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable. But they would cancel. They would just cancel, they would just say like, "Oh no, we don't want to make you uncomfortable. We'll do this another time." They wouldn't. They wouldn't. If you've ever been to a large conference, the way it goes is you see each other and you go, "Hey, yeah, we should have lunch later." "Yeah, absolutely, okay, see you soon." They see each other next year. They do the exact same conversation again. They do this 47 times, with 47 different people, and they speak to none of them. So if you have an opportunity to actually sit down, you've managed to do it. The lunch is happening. The last minute you get told, "No, don't come, you'll be uncomfortable." Focus, what? You can't help it. I couldn't stop that. I couldn't go like, "No, I'm not uncomfortable." They're like, "No, you'll be, no, we know, it's okay, we'll do a lunch later." I'm like, "Am I uninvited?" They're like, yeah. You can show up, then they'd be upset at you, right? So the biggest problem of this is that being who you are can have obstacles, right? And those obstacles are going to be invisible to everybody else and not necessarily fair. So if you're in any way, shape, or minority in the games industry, the biggest recommendation I have is just find other people like you. That already helps a lot. I started a podcast to find them. Started a podcast called Habibis. 3 Arab game developers talking about the games industry over a cup of tea. Because we wanted a home for Arab game developers so that when the next Arab game developer joined, that they wouldn't feel out of place, right? And there's a million things we could do better, but this was the thing that we did, right? And so find your people. They're going to be here. I thought there would be no Arabs. There's a ton of them, right? I thought there would be no Muslims. There's a ton of them. Whatever you are, whatever your background, you'll find it in the games industry because this is one of the most international, weird, creative, interesting industries out there. Everybody wants to make games. If everybody wants to commit themselves to making games, it's a separate question, but you will not be alone. So find your people. And if you have trouble finding your people, look for special interest groups, look at the IGDA, look at all that. And don't forget, this is going to sound really weird, but being Dutch is a minority in the games industry. So if you are Dutch, please keep in mind that we are incredibly blunt as a people. That when people ask us for an opinion, we give them the opinion, and we think that's okay. That Americans will lie to your face, as long as it makes you feel better. They will say, "Oh yeah, your panel, absolutely, it's top of my list, I'm so looking forward to it," and then just not fucking show up. Because it's not top of their list, that's just what you do. If you go to a Dutch person and you go, "Are you coming to my panel?" You're like, "No, it kind of looks shit." We're okay with that. That is incredibly good. We're super fine with that, right? Same thing, if you're ever in team context, as Dutch people, we're used that no matter your hierarchy in a company, you're allowed to have your opinion. So if you're an intern and the director of the company has a stupid ass opinion, you can tell them that it's a stupid ass opinion because that's the Netherlands. You cannot do that in any other country on earth. I can tell you that. There's not a single other country on earth that's like, "Oh yeah, intern, please tell the director that he's full of shit." That's a great, like, fuck yeah, we needed that. Doesn't work anywhere else, right? So just to give you a bit of an idea how that feels if you are a minority, that's how that feels. Where the way you are just isn't accepted, right? So there's a lot there. Find your own people so that the world makes sense around you. And if you ever need help with that, same thing. Feel free to reach out. I know a lot of special interest groups around games, so I'm happy to connect you to those. There's so many. let me, instead of telling you all of my blunders and making Ilias upset by blundering by going overtime too much, we all fuck up, right? You have fucked up. You will fuck up again. Like that is, there is no way around that. No matter what you try to do, you will get it wrong sometimes. And I don't just mean in games, right? Somebody asked earlier about like, what about life? Like you will fuck up in life as well, right? Like I said earlier, like breakups. I've done some fuck ups in my relationship life, right? And that's just part of how you grow. And I think we accept that we fuck up and that we move on. But for some reason, I think as soon as you start saying like job or company, it gets much scarier. The reality is that if a fuck up is in good faith, it is usually forgiven pretty good. If a fuck up is intentional or malicious, oh, we will know. And you will not live it down. There are a few people in the games industry that are just known for being massive assholes. They will not get it done. They are looking for new people coming into games that have never heard of them just to stay afloat. Because without that, they would never have work again, right? And so, when it comes to fuck-ups, I have cost Lambert as a company. I once calculated it in 2016. I cost them 1.3 million euros in total. It involved a clone that I mismarketed. It involved a project that I canceled. It involved a deal that I didn't take. It was a $400,000 deal. I thought it would be strategically unwise. It turned out it would have been strategically very wise because we would have had $400,000. I have been blunt in ways I shouldn't have been in social media. I have tried to pick fights that aren't mine. I have I've been late with paying a contractor once, and I just forgot about it. And then 3 months later, they emailed and they were like, "This is the worst collaboration I ever had." And I was like, "I wish you had emailed again. I know it's my fault, but I was handled it, but it is my fault, so can't blame them for that, right?" I have once uploaded the source code of Nuclear Throne to Steam, which nobody noticed. Everybody just complained that the game wasn't working, which was great because I got to fix it. I only found out after my plane landed because I uploaded it before getting on the airplane. Then went on a 6-hour flight and then landed. Everybody being Nuclear Throne isn't working, and then we check in, be like, "Oh fuck, that's the entire source code." A lot of stupid shit happens in games. Like, genuinely, like, we fuck up all the time. This industry is a weird industry in that nobody knows what we're doing, right? The tech stack is weird, the goal is weird, we're doing lies, it's a market that keeps changing, everybody is upset, influencers need to be negative about things, and then we all fuck up. We all fuck up under pressure, we all fuck up out of ego, we all fuck up out of assumption, we fuck up a million different ways. I think the main thing is to try and figure out why you fucked up, figure out how to not fuck up again, and then try to do better. Right? And so, don't beat yourself up. Like, literally, I am a fairly famous independent game developer, and I uploaded the source code of my game to public. I'm still here. I'm still making video games. Nobody like launched me into space. The amplitude of fuck up you need to do for this to be a permanent mark against you is like it's not a small thing. I've been the main character on social media 4 or 5 times in my life. In the times of Gamergate, I was suspected to be a CIA plant in the games industry trying to destroy the industry from within. When I pointed out that I cannot enter the United States without getting random checked, somebody on Reddit said, "Yes, that's where he gets his briefings." And I could not, I still do not have a valid counter argument to that. Like that is, I cannot disprove that one. That is brilliant. They should do that. I've been the bad guy, I've been the enemy, I've been the fuck up, I've pissed off a lot of people one time on Twitter. But people know I try. And when I fuck up, I try to be public about it. As public as I am with my successes. So, try and be that way. You'll fuck up, but that's okay. Just don't be an ass about it. Learning new things, the best thing. The best thing about game development, it will never stop. It will never stop because this industry doesn't stop. And so I get this question all the time from journalists where they go, Rami, what are you excited about in 5 years? My answer is always that I have no fucking idea where things are going. When I started, the App Store was new. Flash games was the largest games market on earth. You would make games for websites. Those websites would put ads in front of them and you would play them at school. Console did not allow digital distribution yet. And in the time I was here, free-to-play was invented, which, you know, we can have discussions about that. VR came up. Became a big thing and then went down. We had blockchain gaming for a year and a half. Now we have AI everywhere. And if you had asked me any of those things 3 years in front, I would have not known. I think that the thing I love about games is that every 6 months, it feels like everything has changed, right? That the market has changed, what people want has changed. Nobody expected Clarobscuro, nobody expected Balatro, nobody expected Peak. I think my favorite thing to do with a lot of people is ask them to look at the Game Awards. You know Game Awards, the Jeff Keighley Oscars? Look at the Keighley Oscars, and then pick any random year, and look at which game won the Best Game Award. And try to use that game to extrapolate what won the Best Game Award 3 years later. That's how long it takes to make a game, right? About 3 years, 2-3 years. Is there any year where you could look at the winner of that year and then extrapolate 3 years forward which game would have won based on that? No. No, it's the 1 year's Red Dead Redemption and then it's Celeste. How do those connect? Nobody fucking knows. You know, we work in chaos. We work in utter complete creative chaos, and to me that's the most interesting thing. So for me, creativity is learning new things. But it's not just learning new things in games, right? Like, it is, for me, learning to fly an airplane. Sorry, bring it up again, but like learning to fly an airplane. It is reading books, learning a new language. I'm learning Spanish right now. It was easy until past tense came in, that I didn't understand it anymore. I got obsessed with like directors, movie directors. I wanted to figure out how a movie director runs a set. And then I got actually very interested in like the way they do call sheets. Like, what is a call sheet? And I just wanted to know how a call sheet works. I was just curious about that. I just chase stuff. It helps that my brain is built that way, and I think technically I should probably be diagnosed with ADHD or ADD or something, but like that's fine. Like I think probably a lot of us. But I just like chasing thoughts. And I think the biggest superpower you can have in games is just being curious. Just wanting to see more, wanting to learn more, wanting to understand more, wanting to work with more people from more places, with more backgrounds, with more stories, like playing games that you would never play. My favorite game jam that I used to organize was called Fuck This Jam, and the whole thing was make a game in a genre you hate, and it was the best time I had because everybody made racing games. I don't know why everybody hates racing games. Everybody made racing games. And it was the best time. Everybody had a great time making racing games. I think the moment you stop being an interesting creative is the moment you stop looking for new things, right? And so for me, being a creative and being curious, I don't think you can separate those two. I think you can be really good at one thing and keep getting better at one thing, as long as you keep finding new ways of looking at that thing. So if you don't have other hobbies than game development, if you want to be a better game developer, find a hobby. Anything else. Anything that isn't games. Anything where the worst thing that happened today has nothing to do with a man who peels snot off his wall having an opinion about video games. Listen, influences are wild. I don't know what to tell you. Any place else, right? For me, the flying thing, the wind is weird. That's the worst thing that'll happen on the day. Everybody will sit at the airport and be like, oh no, the winds are, they're cross. I'm like, oh fuck, that's awful. Yeah, it's gonna be rough landings. Yeah. It's just nice to have another world, so find the other worlds, right? Like, I remember before the HKU, before school, it was easy. I did badminton, I did sports, I love badminton, I played competitive badminton. I did sports, I loved going traveling, I read, I watched movies, I drew poorly again, but I liked trying. I was learning an instrument and then did HKU and everything was video games. There was nothing that wasn't video games anymore, and that took me a long time to find my way back to just being an interesting human, outside of just being interested in games. Turns out that's actually not that interesting. We already have that in common. So find things that are special about you, learn new stuff, and keep doing that. I don't have time for Q&A because you guys will murder me. That said, if anybody has questions, I don't know, what do we do with this? The building getting shut down? Are we going to get arrested?
We can officially end this, and afterwards, if you want to leave, they can leave, or they can come up to you.
I hope that people were free to leave during this presentation. I've been keeping people here. I feel really bad about it. If anybody has any questions,